Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce for the March 26th weekly legislative update. Are a week away from the next legislative bills that have passed the House have to pass out of Senate committees, and Senate bills that have to pass out of House committees to be able to stay alive. There are some exceptions to that as well, and those include ways and means bills, appropriations bills, leadership bills. Those really are funnel proof. So those are things that a lot of our issues that we watch are a lot of the times ways and means and appropriations bills. So a lot of the times our bills are funnel proof, and most of our priority bills are funnel proof or have already made it through where they need to be for the funnel. But just a few issues that I want to make sure that we touch on for this week is one, I want to thank the legislators who joined us for our monthly legislative roundtable, and that was Senator Dawson, Senator Shipley, and Representative Segrist and Representative Jacobson. We had a really good conversation about a lot of different issues. There's a ton of different things going on at the Capitol, and it's so important to have that touch base with them every month. So we thank them for their participation, and we thank everyone who joined us as an attendee and may have asked a question as well. That's so important to making those a success. So thank you very much. As far as issues that I want to make sure we touch on, I'll start first with the tech censorship bill. That bill passed out of the Senate a few weeks ago. There's a different version that's already been taken up in the House as well. The Senate version was a lot more pointed. It specifically went after incentives from the state and local jurisdictions who may have provided assistance to tech companies located here in the state of Iowa. That's something we're very the state of Nebraska is now looking at doing within their unicameral the exact opposite of trying to make them more of a welcoming environment for these kinds of companies. And you can bet that it may very well be because they've seen what other states are doing. So they're trying to make sure that they're moving forward in that regard, which obviously as a border community, we're always watching that as we look to compete with and also partner, depending on the issue, with the greater Omaha area in the state of Nebraska. But another thing that's important, as I mentioned, there's a difference with the House bill. The House bill really kind of looks more at fining entities who may break the tech censorship kind of restrictions that are put forward in the bill. So we're really going to have to wait and see what the House decides to do with this bill. But either way, we really do hope that it doesn't go anywhere and that it's kind of not moving forward for the remainder of session, because the message has already been sent and a good message that's been received from the state of Iowa. It's just largely that, we're not open for business regard. So we really want to make sure that we don't move this forward because we don't want to add it with moving some of these bills forward. Another bill that I'll make sure we touch on is the medical malpractice bill. It currently sits on the House debate calendar. And as we heard in our legislative comment about how it really is challenging to attract workforce as a result of the fact we don't have a cap on our non-economic damages. This bill would put that cap on non-economic damages of $1 million. It would make us more competitive from a workforce. Another bill I wanted to make sure I touched on is the tax increment financing bill. It passed out of the Ways and Means Committee last week. We haven't seen anything happen since then. We really hope that we won't see anything happen with it as well, just because this bill also is something that would be largely detrimental to not only the state, but also to both rural and urban communities. It would really push obligations onto GO bonds. It would make us less competitive with our neighbor across the river once again, as that we have an advantage with the ability that we have. And it would really put burden back onto local governments within these districts that may be faded out, because you would ratchet down the ink and not be able to do any additional projects, and then once again possibly have to move those to GO bonds, which a lot of communities, while Council Bluffs may have some capacity, there's a lot of community to be able to take on GO bonds and debt. So if you do put that onto communities who even may have the capacity, they are then obviously having to reprioritize the resources and how they do things in a way that may not be best for their constituents and the citizens. Another topic that I wanted to make sure I touched on is the tax bills. There's two tax bills that I want to touch on, and both of them came out of the Senate Ways and Means Committee last 2 weeks. First was the tax triggers, was the that would allow us to bill, and we thank him for that. Another bill that came up this week that just dropped on Monday. It's a very big bill. We talked about it in our legislative roundtable as well. And it has to do with mental health funding and shifting property tax away from some of the current mechanism and manner that it is used to fund mental health in the regional system through counties. So what it would essentially do is it would more a sales tax approach, 60 million off upfront and property tax liability, and then ratchet it up to anywhere between 125 to 150 over the next few years to really invest heavily in mental health within the regional system in the state of Iowa. While we're supportive of that piece, and also this bill also includes repealing the triggers as well. So we're supportive of those things. We have some concerns of removing the Pearl levy for the school district. We know that's something that our superintendents have kind of wanted some clarification on. So we stand with them on that, making sure that we get the clarification needed on that, and that they've heard all the considerations that are needed regarding impacts of repealing that. But really the biggest issue is the repeal of the property tax backfill. And that's something that goes back to the 2013 property tax reform bill. And it's where the state backfills the 10% ratcheting down of commercial and industrial property tax. And it's a large number. It's about 2 million for the city. It's about 1 million for the school district. And it's hundreds of thousands for the county. So that's a huge issue. Obviously, as you look at throughout the state, it's about $152, $155 million. But that's for the Council Bluffs community, how it would impact us. And there's always concerns that as you look at ratcheting that down, what does that do to property tax levels? What does that do to the level of services and what they're able to provide? So that's something we're also working to get some additional clarification on. It would ratchet it down, I will say, over a number of years, but that's something that we've stood opposed to in the past. So it's an interesting bill insofar as that it has some things that we are very supportive of, but it also has some things that we have some concerns about. So we'll look forward to having those conversations with Senator Dawson, who moved the bill forward, and also the Senate Republicans who are who are looking to move that. That's really is an important issue to make sure that we're funding that adequately, but we do want some clarifications and to have our concerns heard on some of those issues I did outline, because those could have huge impacts for the entities and jurisdictions that I outlined. The child care bills continue. There's 8 of them. They've passed the House. They're kind of sitting in the Senate at this point. We continue to advocate for the Senate to move those bills forward, and we hope that they will. With broadband, we've seen some movement on that in the House. We're really happy about the possibility of our area and state with the broadband that we need, but it's also important to note that we need to make sure we're trying to hit that 100 upload download speed where we can to meet the manufacturing 4.0 goals that have been put forth by Director Durham with Iowa Economic Development Authority. The housing omnibus bill, another issue we talked about at the roundtable. That's something we really need to make sure we continue to advocate, especially for the 2 issues of the brownfield grayfield tax credit, but also the workforce housing tax credit. Those are both things that they're asking for doubling of appropriations, 25 to 50 million for workforce housing and 10 to 20 for brownfield grayfield. And we really hope that we can get that additional funds, because those are 2 really good programs to make sure that we're providing some investment back into our communities for community development and housing development. One thing Senator Dawson did reference on the roundtable, though, is that it's hard to pull those numbers back down on tax credits as you go forward. So he looked at, as we look at possibly trying to pay off the backlog for workforce housing for urban, which is a huge issue because we need to have that resource and we haven't for the last few years. maybe looking at using some one-time funds to do that, and then providing some funding for the workforce housing tax credit to get the resources of it. But we are open to conversations just to make sure that we can move forward in the manner that we need to get those resources into the hands of the people who need them. Another topic I wanted to make sure I touched on is we just want to make sure we continue to support Debbie Durham and her team with manufacturing 4.0 and just the reallocation of tax credits within Iowa Economic Development Authority. It's a conversation we continue to have with legislators. It's really important that as we look at the supply and demand with those tax credits, that they're going where the demand is. So that's something that Debbie and her team has done a really good job with at Iowa Economic Development Authority. So we stand by the reallocation that she has of the $155 million in tax credits existing, and then the $15 million for the new low to moderate income housing tax credit that she's pushing for this session as well. Manufacturing 4.0 is another really important issue as we look forward to what the future is going to look like with automation and cyber and a litany of different issues. We continue to make sure that we get the resources in the hands of those who need it to move that forward, because it's going to be really important to make sure Iowa stays up with the times and that we don't fall behind in this ever-changing world with technology. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is charter schools. That passed late Wednesday, or actually early Thursday morning in the House. And what's going to happen with that now is they did put some restrictions back into it, which we talked about on the roundtable as well. But it's going to go back to the Senate. They have a subcommittee scheduled for Tuesday for that bill already. But if there is changes made in the Senate, it would have to go back to the House. House did have a pretty hard time have that bill does pass out of the Senate with change institutions of these districts expressing the concerns that are there with the implementation of charter schools and the potential lack of accountability that we've seen in some other areas and the lack of success, frankly, that we've seen in some other areas of the country with charter schools. So with that, that concludes the topics that I wanted to make sure. And again, thank you to the legislators who participated in the monthly legislative review, to our sponsors for that event as well. We're so thankful and we're so fortunate to have all the folks that are joining us for these events, and we really do look forward to getting back to them in person, and we know that'll be here soon. But we do thank you for joining us for these virtual events and really continuing to support the Council Bluffs Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you again.